The cruise ship Serenity's Dream moved through space like a floating palace. Its white walls gleamed under soft lights, and happy voices filled the corridors. Inside the ship, 2,147 passengers from the peaceful planet Vaxia were going home for their biggest celebration of the year. Captain Wren stood on the bridge watching the stars through the main window. He had been flying passenger ships for 20 years and had never seen any trouble. The Vaxians were a gentle people who had forgotten what war looked like. Their ships carried no weapons because they had no enemies. "Captain," called his communications officer Tal from her station. "I'm getting some strange readings ahead." Wren walked over to look at her screen. "What kind of readings?" "Something big, sir." "Really big? It looks like a ship, but..." Tal's voice trailed off as she adjusted her controls. "The computer says it's dead, but the energy patterns don't match anything in our database." Through the main window, they could see it now. A massive dark shape hung in space like a sleeping monster. The ship was 3 times bigger than Serenity's Dream and covered in strange marks that looked like battle scars. Sharp edges stuck out from its hull like teeth. "I've never seen a design like that," whispered the navigation officer Tom. "Look, at those weapon ports. Who builds ships like that?" Captain Wren felt a cold fear in his stomach, but he tried to stay calm. "Maybe it's an old cargo ship. Scan it and see if anyone's alive over there." Tal's fingers moved over her controls. "Scanning now, Captain. I'm trying to..." The dead ship suddenly blazed with light. Red warning alarms started screaming throughout. The bridge. The peaceful cruise ship shook as invisible forces grabbed it and held it tight. The engines went quiet. The lights flickered. "Captain," Tom shouted over the noise. "They've got us in some kind of grip beam. I can't move the ship." On the main screen, the alien vessel turned toward them like a predator opening its eyes. Bright lights moved along its hull, and parts of the ship began to open like hungry mouths. "Who are they?" Wren asked, but no one had an answer. The communications system crackled with a voice speaking in a language none of them knew. The words sounded harsh and cruel. Then the computer's translation system kicked in and the message became clear. "Surrender your ship. Do not resist. You will not be harmed if you obey." The passengers in the corridors began to panic as the ship shook. Again, children started crying. Adults pressed against the windows, staring at the monster ship outside. "Captain," Tal said in a small voice, "they're launching something." Small dark shapes shot out from the alien ship like angry insects. They moved fast through space, heading straight for Serenity's Dream. As they got closer, everyone could see they were boarding pods designed to cut through ship hulls. "Send a distress signal," Captain Wren ordered. "Send it on all frequencies. Tell anyone who can hear us that we need help." Tal's hands shook as she worked. "What should I say, Captain?" "Tell them we're under attack by unknown raiders. Give them our position. Tell them..." Wren paused, watching the boarding pods get closer. "Tell them we have nearly 3,000 civilians aboard and no way to defend ourselves." The message went out into space, traveling faster than light to reach anyone who might be listening. It bounced from relay station to relay station, spreading across the galaxy like ripples in a pond. Most of the ships that received the signal were too far away to help. Military vessels began calculating how long it would take to reach the crisis, but the numbers were bad. 18 hours minimum, maybe more. But in one small corner of space, a different kind of ship picked up the message. The Iron Will was not like other ships. It was smaller than Serenity's Dream, but built like a weapon. Its hull was dark gray metal covered in scars from old battles. Inside, 43 humans worked at their stations with calm efficiency. Commander Blake read the distress message on his screen. He was a tall man with quiet eyes that had seen too much fighting. Around him, his crew waited for orders. "Unknown raiders attacking civilian transport," Blake said to his officers. "Nearly 3,000 souls at risk. We're the closest ship. That can make a difference." His second-in-command, Lieutenant Peters, checked the navigation computer. 3 hours at maximum burn, sir. But we don't know who we're facing or how many ships they have." Blake looked at the message again. "Civilian transport, no weapons, families with children aboard." the kind of people who had never hurt anyone in their lives. Doesn't matter, he said. Helm, set course for those coordinates. Engineering, I want every bit of power you can give me. Communications, send word to High Command about what we're doing. The iron will turned in space and began to accelerate. Its engines burned brighter than normal as the human ship raced toward the crisis. Back aboard Serenity's Dream, the first boarding pod smashed through the hull with a shower of sparks. Emergency doors slammed shut, but more pods were coming. Through the holes in the ship, armed figures in dark armor began to pour inside. The aliens were tall and thin, with long arms and sharp claws. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. Their leader wore a helmet decorated with the bones of small animals. The Vaxian passengers had never seen violence before. They huddled together in groups, too scared to run and too gentle to fight back. Some tried to hide, but the raiders moved through the ship like they had done this many times before. Captain Wren stood on his bridge, watching his peaceful ship being invaded. He had no weapons to fight with and no training for war. All he could do was hope that someone had heard their call for help. In the cargo bay, the raiders began separating the passengers into groups. The strong ones would be sold as workers. The smart ones would become servants. The raiders didn't care what happened to the rest. But somewhere in the darkness of space, help was coming. The human ship Iron Will flew toward them with engines burning bright and weapons ready for war. Commander Blake and his crew had heard the call of people in danger, and they were bringing the fury of Earth with them. The Vaxians didn't know it yet, but they were about to learn why humans were called the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They were about to discover what happened when someone threatened the innocent while humans were listening. The rescue was coming, and it would be terrible and wonderful to see. The distress signal from Serenity's Dream reached the Galactic Council headquarters within minutes. In the great meeting hall, representatives from dozens of peaceful species gathered around their floating desks. The emergency session began with worried voices filling the air. Ambassador Vale of the Centauri system stood up first. Her blue skin looked pale under the bright lights. The attack happened in neutral space, she said. The raiders are using an unknown ship design. Our databases show nothing like it. How many civilians are aboard the transport? Asked Council Leader Nix, his forearms moving nervously. Nearly 3,000, Vale replied. All Vaxians. They have no military training and no weapons. The ship was heading home for their festival of lights. A heavy silence fell over the room. Everyone knew what happened to civilians when pirates found them. The slave markets in the outer systems paid good money for workers, and the raiders didn't care who got hurt. What forces do we have nearby? Nix asked his military advisor. General Cass checked his data pad with his large elephant-like trunk. The nearest patrol fleet is 18 hours away, sir. The 4th battle group could reach them in 22 hours, but by then, he didn't need to finish. Everyone understood. Wait, said Ambassador Vale, looking at her own screen. There's a human ship in that sector, the Iron Will. They're already moving toward the crisis. The room became very quiet. When anyone mentioned humans in the council, the mood always changed. Some species feared them, others respected them. All of them knew that humans were different from every other race in the galaxy. Trade Captain Fox from the Merchant Guild raised his hand. I've heard stories about human ships. They say one cargo vessel fought off 12 pirate ships last year near the Rim Worlds. Stories, muttered Ambassador Zen from his corner seat. Humans tell many stories about themselves. But Captain Fox shook his head. I was there, Zen. I saw the wreckage. 12 pirate ships reduced to floating metal. The human cargo ship barely had a scratch on it. Diplomatic aide Lynn stood up from her seat. She was young and had only been working at the council for 2 years. My uncle serves on a rescue station near human space, she said quietly. He told me about human rescue teams. They go into places that would kill anyone else. Radiation storms, collapsed space stations, ships falling into black holes. They just go in and bring people out. But this is different, said Ambassador Vale. This is combat. Military action. General Cass looked uncomfortable. The humans have warships, he said slowly. Not many species build pure combat vessels anymore. Most of our ships are for exploration or trade, but humans, they still build ships that exist only to fight wars. How do you know this? Asked Council Leader Nix. Because they offered to show them to us, Cass replied. 5 years ago, when the hegemony was causing trouble in the border systems, the humans asked if we wanted to see their fleet. I said yes, I wish I hadn't. The general's large eyes looked distant as he remembered. They took me to a place they called a shipyard. I saw vessels designed to kill other ships. No cargo space, no passenger areas, no science labs, just weapons, armor, and engines. The humans who ran the ships were different too. Calm, professional. They talked about destroying enemy fleets like farmers talk about harvesting crops. Young Lin spoke again. Are they really as dangerous as everyone says? Ambassador Vale pulled up a file on her screen. Human, homeworld, Earth, gravity twice galactic standard, atmosphere with poison gas that most species can't breathe, weather that includes frozen water falling from the sky and electrical storms that can kill, predatory animals everywhere, plants that can digest meat. The oceans are full of creatures with teeth. She paused, letting the information sink in. Humans evolved on a planet that was trying to kill them every single day. They learned to fight before they learned to build cities. They had wars for thousands of years before they reached space. But they're allies now, said Captain Fox. They trade with us, they follow council law. Yes, agreed Vale, but they're still humans. When something threatens innocent people, they don't call committees or hold votes, they just act. Far away from the council meeting, aboard the Iron Will, Commander Blake studied the tactical information his crew had gathered. The ship flew through hyperspace at maximum speed, but it would still take 3 hours to reach the crisis. What do we know about the raider vessel? Blake asked his intelligence officer, Sergeant Wall. Wall was a short woman with scars on her hands from old battles. It's big, sir, much bigger than us. The design doesn't match anything in our files, but the weapon signatures suggest it's very old, maybe from the time of the hegemony wars. How old? Asked Blake. 500 years, maybe more. The hegemony. Built ships to last, and they built them to kill. If this is one of their lost vessels, it could have enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Lieutenant Peters looked up from his navigation station. Sir, we're just one ship. Shouldn't we wait for backup? Blake was quiet for a moment. Around him, his crew waited for the answer. These were humans who had served in the Space Marines, fought pirates in the outer systems, and rescued civilians from disasters across the galaxy. They knew their commander was thinking about the odds. How many people are on that cruise ship, Peters? Blake finally asked. Nearly 3,000, sir. And how long before the council fleet arrives? 18 hours minimum. Blake nodded slowly. Those civilians don't have 18 hours. The raiders will be gone long before any help arrives. They'll take the strong ones for slaves and leave the rest to die in space. He turned to address his entire crew. I know we're outnumbered. I know their ship is bigger than ours. But we've faced bad odds before. More importantly, we're the only chance those people have. The bridge was silent for a moment. Then Sergeant Wall spoke up. Sir, what are your orders? Blake looked at the display showing their destination. Somewhere ahead, innocent families were being terrorized by raiders who thought no one would stop them. They were about to learn what happened when humans heard a cry for help. All stations, prepare for combat, Blake announced. Engineering, I want weapons charged and ready. Medical, prepare for casualties. Marines, get your gear ready for boarding action. He paused, looking at each of his officers. We're going to show these raiders why the galaxy calls us Deathworlders, and we're going to bring those civilians home. The Iron Will flew on through hyperspace, carrying death toward those who hurt the innocent. The Iron Will dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the battle zone. Commander Blake stood on the bridge, staring at the scene before them. The alien raider ship hung in space like a metal mountain covered in spikes and weapon ports. Beside it, the cruise ship Serenity's Dream looked small and helpless. My God, whispered Lieutenant Peters. That thing is massive. The raider vessel was 3 times longer than their ship and twice as wide. Its black hull was decorated with strange symbols and what looked like trophies from destroyed ships. Weapon turrets moved slowly along its sides like the eyes of a hunting beast. "Scan it," Blake ordered. Sergeant Wall worked at her station. "Sir, I'm reading heavy armor, military-grade shields, and enough weapons to level a city. This ship was built for one purpose only, which is to kill other ships, sir." Inside the raider vessel, Captain Vex stood in his command center surrounded by screens showing his prize. The Vaxian cruise ship was full of valuable cargo, not just goods, but people. The slave markets would pay well for so many workers. Vex was tall and thin like all of his species, the Keth. His skin was gray like old metal, and his eyes were black holes in his skull. He had been raiding civilian ships for over 200 years, and he had never lost a battle. "Captain," called his sensor officer, "another ship just arrived. Small vessel, unknown design." Vex looked at the screen showing the newcomer. It was tiny compared to his mighty Bloodfang. Its hull was dark gray and covered in scars, but it looked like nothing special. "Just one ship?" Vex laughed, showing his sharp teeth. "Send them a warning. Tell them to leave or be destroyed." The message went out across space to the Iron Will. Blake listened to the translation and smiled coldly. "Sir, they're ordering us to retreat," reported the communications officer. "Send a reply," Blake said. "Tell them to release the civilians and surrender their ship." When Captain Vex heard the human response, he laughed even harder. "Surrender? To that tiny ship? Fire a warning shot. Show them what real weapons look like." A beam of red energy shot from the Blood Fang toward the human ship. It was meant to miss and scare them away. But instead of running, the Iron Will did something unexpected. It accelerated straight toward the raider ship. "Battle stations," Blake announced calmly. "All weapons ready. Marines, prepare for boarding action." The human ship began to glow as its weapon systems powered up. What had looked like a small, harmless vessel suddenly revealed its true nature. Hidden weapon ports opened along its hull. Missile tubes extended from the sides. The ship's engines burned brighter as it picked up speed. "Captain," Vex's weapons officer shouted, "that ship is armed like a battle cruiser." "Impossible," Vex snarled. "It's too small to carry that much firepower." But the sensors didn't lie. The human ship was packed with weapons that should have been impossible to fit in such a small space. Worse, the energy readings showed that every system was designed for maximum destruction. The first exchange of fire lit up the darkness of space. The Bloodfang launched everything it had: energy beams, plasma bolts, and explosive missiles. The barrage was enough to destroy a small fleet. The human ship didn't try to dodge. It flew straight through the attack, its shields absorbing hits that should have vaporized it. Some shots got through and tore holes in the hull, but the ship kept coming. Then the Iron Will fired back. The Keth had never seen weapons like these. Instead of energy beams, the humans used solid metal slugs fired at incredible speed. The projectiles punched through the raiders' shields like they were made of paper and smashed into the hull with the force of explosions. "Shields down to 60%, screamed Vex's engineer. "How is that possible?" Vex demanded. "We barely scratched them and they're tearing us apart." The human missiles were even worse. They didn't explode when they hit the hull. Instead, they burrowed inside like metal worms and then detonated deep within the ship. Entire sections of the Bloodfang went dark as internal explosions destroyed power lines and life support. Aboard the Iron Will, Blake watched the battle with calm eyes. His ship shook from enemy fire, but the damage reports were manageable. Human ships were built to take punishment and keep fighting. "Sir, we've breached their outer hull in 3 places," reported Sergeant Wall. "Their shields are failing." "Launch boarding pods," Blake ordered. "Target their engine room and bridge. Marines, you know what to do." The boarding pods shot out from the human ship like bullets. But these weren't the crude cutting tools the Keth had used on the cruise ship. These were military assault pods, designed to punch through heavy armor and deliver trained soldiers into enemy vessels. Captain Vex watched in horror as the human pods smashed into his ship. "All warriors to repel boarders," he screamed into his communicator. "Stop them at any cost." The Keth warriors were tough fighters who had terrorized the galaxy for months. They carried advanced weapons and had experience fighting scared civilians. But they had never faced human Marines. The first boarding pod cut through the hull of the Bloodfang with plasma torches. When the hole was big enough, 4 humans in black armor stepped through. They moved with perfect coordination, their weapons ready, their helmets scanning the area with electronic eyes. The Keth warriors waiting in the corridor fired everything they had. Energy bolts filled the air like deadly rain. But the humans had anticipated this. They used the walls and ceiling for cover, moving in patterns that confused their enemies. When the humans fired back, their weapons didn't make pretty light shows. They made Keth warriors fall down and stop moving. "Corridor secured," reported Marine Sergeant Rock over the radio. "Moving to secondary target." All through the raider ship, the same scene played out. Keth warriors who had dominated helpless civilians suddenly found themselves fighting an enemy that was faster, smarter, and completely ruthless. The humans didn't shout or make threats. They just moved through the ship like a plague of death, clearing one section after another. Their weapons were designed to kill quickly and efficiently. Their tactics assumed the enemy would be dangerous and prepared for everything. For the first time in 2 centuries, Captain Vex felt real fear. The tiny human ship had torn apart his mighty vessel, and now human soldiers were hunting his warriors through the corridors of his own ship. "Send a surrender signal," he ordered his communications officer. "Sir, they're not accepting surrenders," came the terrified reply. "The humans aren't taking prisoners." Blake's voice came over all frequencies, cold and final. "You should have thought about mercy before you attacked innocent people." The battle inside the raider ship Bloodfang became a nightmare for the Keth warriors. They had spent months attacking helpless civilian ships, but now they faced an enemy that hunted them like wild animals. Marine Sergeant Rock led his team through the dark corridors of the alien vessel. His armor's night vision turned the blackness into green daylight. Behind him, 3 other Marines moved in perfect formation. They communicated through hand signals and electronic whispers that the enemy couldn't hear. "Contact ahead," Rock whispered into his helmet radio. 6 hostiles behind improvised barricade. The Keth warriors had torn apart wall panels and furniture to build a defensive position. They waited with their energy weapons charged, thinking they could stop the humans with superior firepower. They were wrong. Rock's team didn't charge the barricade like the Keth expected. Instead, they used something the raiders had never seen before: military tactics designed by a species that had been fighting wars for thousands of years. Marine Davis crawled through an air vent above the enemy position. Marine Torres found a maintenance tunnel that led behind the barricade. Rock and Marine Kim created noise and light to distract the defenders while their teammates moved into position. When the attack came, it lasted only seconds. The Keth warriors found themselves surrounded and outgunned before they knew what was happening. Their superior numbers meant nothing when they couldn't see their enemies coming. "Section 7 clear," Rock reported. "Moving to engineering." All through the ship, similar scenes played out. Human Marines moved like ghosts through corridors the Keth thought they controlled. They used the ship's own design against its crew, finding routes through ventilation systems and maintenance areas that the raiders had forgotten existed. Captain Vex retreated deeper into his ship, dragging his remaining officers with him. The bridge was heavily armored and had multiple defensive positions. Surely the humans couldn't break through his strongest defenses. "How many warriors do we have left?" he demanded. His second-in-command, Officer Grix, checked his communicator with shaking hands. "Maybe 30, Captain. The humans are killing them faster than we can regroup." 30? Vex couldn't believe it. He had started with over 200 warriors. "How is that possible?" "They fight like devils, sir. They don't make mistakes. They don't panic. They just keep coming." Meanwhile, Commander Blake led his own boarding team toward the bridge. Unlike his Marines, Blake's mission was to capture the ship's computer systems and find out who these raiders really were. The Iron Will continued its attack from outside, targeting specific systems to prevent the enemy ship from escaping. But Blake had ordered his gunners to avoid destroying the vessel completely. He wanted answers, and dead ships couldn't provide information. "Sir, "We've reached the computer core," reported Technical Sergeant Brown. She was a small woman who could make any electronic system do whatever she wanted. "Give me 5 minutes and I'll have everything they've got." Blake stood guard while Brown worked her magic on the alien computers. Around them, the sounds of battle echoed through the ship as his Marines cleared the remaining resistance. "Got it," Brown announced. "Sir, you need to see this." The information on the screen made Blake's blood run cold. The Bloodfang wasn't just a single raider ship. It was part of a fleet that had been attacking civilian vessels for 8 months. The computer showed records of 17 different ships that had been captured or destroyed. "How many people?" Blake asked quietly. Brown's face was pale as she read the data. "Over 4,000 civilians taken for the slave market, sir. Men, women, children from a dozen different species. They're being held at a base in the void sector." Blake felt the familiar cold anger that made humans so dangerous. It wasn't hot rage that made people stupid. It was the ice-cold fury that made them efficient killers. "Download everything," he ordered. "Ship designs, base locations, slave market contacts, everything. Then send it to Fleet Command with highest priority." "Sir, what about the prisoners they're already holding?" Blake checked his weapon and looked toward the bridge where Captain Vex was making his last stand. "We're going to get them back. All of them." The final assault on the bridge came like a thunderstorm. Blake's team didn't waste time with warnings or demands for surrender. They cut through the armored doors with plasma torches and flowed into the command center like water finding cracks in stone. Captain Vex had been a terror of the spaceways for 2 centuries. He had destroyed countless ships and sold thousands of beings into slavery. But faced with human Marines in full battle gear, he looked like what he really was, a bully who had finally met someone stronger. "Wait!" he screamed as the humans surrounded him. "I can make a deal. I have information you need." Blake walked slowly toward the Keth captain. His helmet was off now, showing a human face that revealed nothing. "You're right. You do have information I need. The location of your base, the names of your contacts, the identity of everyone who bought slaves from you. Yes, I'll tell you everything. Just don't kill me." Blake studied the alien who had caused so much suffering. "You attacked a ship full of families. You were going to sell children into slavery. You've been doing this for months." "It's just business," Vex pleaded. "We never killed anyone we didn't have to." "Neither do we," Blake replied calmly. Then he pulled the trigger. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of computers. Blake turned to his team. "Strip the computer systems. I want every byte of data they have. Then prepare charges to destroy this ship." "Sir, shouldn't we capture it?" asked Sergeant Brown. Blake looked around the bridge that had been the command center for months of terror and suffering. "This ship has been used to hunt innocent people. It doesn't deserve to exist." As his team worked, Blake contacted the Iron Will. "This is the commander. Prepare rescue teams for immediate deployment to the civilian ship. Full medical support and trauma counselors." "Sir, what about the raider base?" asked Lieutenant Peters over the radio. Blake looked at the data Brown had downloaded. The Keth base was hidden in an asteroid field 3 star systems away. It held over 4,000 prisoners from 17 different attacks, men, women, and children who had been living in hell while their families thought they were dead. "Set course for the void sector," Blake ordered. "And send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them we've found a slave operation that needs to be shut down." "Sir, that's outside our patrol area." "We don't have authorization for—" "We have authorization," Blake interrupted. "It's called being human." The rescue of Serenity's dream happened faster than anyone thought possible. Human engineering teams swarmed over the cruise ship like helpful insects, fixing systems that had been damaged during the attack. Within 2 hours, the lights were back on and the air was clean again. Captain Wren stood in his restored bridge watching the humans work. They moved with incredible efficiency, but what surprised him most was how gentle they were with his passengers. The same Marines who had just destroyed an entire raider crew now helped scared children find their parents and brought warm blankets to elderly Vaxians who were shaking from fear. "Captain Wren," said a human medic named Dr. Green. "We've checked. All your passengers. 12 people have injuries, but nothing serious. The psychological trauma will take longer to heal." Ren nodded gratefully. Thank you, Doctor. I don't know how to repay you for this. Dr. Green smiled. You don't need to repay anything. This is what we do. But Ren was confused. The humans had risked their lives and their ship to save people they had never met. They had fought a battle against impossible odds for strangers from another species. Why? I don't understand, Ren said slowly. You could have been killed. Your ship could have been destroyed. Why did you help us? Dr. Green paused in her work. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but Ren could see old scars on her hands from previous battles. Because someone sent out a call for help, she said simply. When people are in danger, someone has to answer. Meanwhile, Commander Blake stood in the wreckage of the Bloodfang with Technical Sergeant Brown. They had downloaded everything from the Raider ship's computers before destroying it. The information they found was worse than they had imagined. Sir, the slave operation is huge, Brown reported. They have buyers from 12 different systems. Some of the purchasers are legitimate businesses that use slave labor. Others are private collectors who buy people like they're collecting rare animals. Blake studied the data on his portable screen. Names, locations, financial records, communication logs, everything needed to destroy the entire network. But it would take time, and the prisoners being held at the Raider base didn't have time. How many ships are guarding their main base? He asked. According to this, at least 6 Raider vessels, maybe more, plus defensive platforms built into the asteroid field. Blake was quiet for a moment. 6 ships against 1 was bad odds, even for humans. But somewhere in that hidden base, over 4,000 innocent people were waiting for rescue that might never come. Sir, Brown continued, Fleet Command has received our data. They're organizing a task force to deal with the slave network, but it will take them a week to assemble enough ships. A week is too long, Blake said. Send a message to every human ship within 50 light years. Military, civilian, cargo haulers, everyone. Tell them what we found and where we're going. Brown looked surprised. Sir, we can't order civilian ships into combat. We're not ordering anyone, Blake replied. We're just letting them know that people need help. Humans don't like to ignore that kind of message. 3 hours later, the Iron Will arrived at the edge of the Void sector. Blake expected to find the hidden Raider base alone, outnumbered and outgunned. Instead, he found something that made him proud to be human. 7 ships waited in space, not military vessels, but civilian craft that had heard the call and come anyway. There was a cargo hauler that should have been delivering supplies to a mining colony, a passenger liner that had changed course from its scheduled route, even a small exploration ship that was supposed to be mapping distant stars. This is Captain Morris of the freight ship Hardworker, came a voice over the radio. We heard you might need some help with a slave rescue operation. Captain Morris, Blake replied. This is a military action. You're not equipped for combat. Morris laughed. Commander, my ship has been hauling cargo through pirate space for 15 years. I've got weapons and shields, and my crew knows how to use them. More importantly, I've got cargo holds big enough to carry 4,000 passengers back to safety. One by one, the other civilian captains checked in. None of them were military ships, but all of them were crewed by humans who had heard that innocent people needed help. They had dropped everything and come to assist, even though it might cost them their lives. All ships, Blake announced. Here's the plan. The attack on the Raider base began at dawn, ship time. The hidden facility was built into a large asteroid, with weapon platforms scattered around it like deadly flowers. 6 Raider ships patrolled the area, confident that their base was too well hidden and too well defended for anyone to find. They were wrong. The humans didn't fight fair. They used the asteroid field itself as cover, bouncing communication signals off space rocks to coordinate attacks. The cargo ships stayed back and provided missile support, while the combat-capable vessels engaged the defenders directly. The battle was short but intense. The Raiders had superior numbers and heavier weapons, but they couldn't match human coordination and determination. When the Iron Will punched through their defenses and began landing assault teams on the base itself, the remaining Raiders surrendered. rather than face human Marines in close combat. Inside the hidden facility, Blake's teams found the prisoners, over 4,000 beings from dozens of species, held in conditions that made him sick to see. Families separated for months, children who had forgotten what their parents looked like, adults who had given up hope of ever seeing home again. "It's okay," Blake told a group of frightened Vaxian children who cowered when his Marines approached. "We're here to take you home." The rescue operation took 12 hours. Human medical teams treated injuries and malnutrition. Engineering crews disabled the slave-holding systems and prepared the prisoners for transport. The civilian cargo ships opened their holds and transformed them into temporary passenger compartments. As the last of the rescued beings boarded the human ships, Blake stood in the empty slave facility. His teams had downloaded all the computers and identified every person involved in the slave trade. Fleet Command would use that information to hunt down the buyers and sellers across the galaxy, but that was tomorrow's work. Today, 4,000 people were going home. Captain Wren of Serenity's Dream found Blake on the observation deck of the Iron Will. Through the window, they could see the cargo ships preparing to depart, their holds full of passengers heading back to their families. "Commander," Wren said quietly, "I still don't understand. Why do humans do this? Why risk everything for strangers?" Blake was quiet for a long moment, watching the ships that carried the rescued prisoners toward home. "Because we know what it's like to be afraid," he finally said. "Every human child grows up on a world that tries to kill them. We learn early that the universe is dangerous and that bad things happen to good people." He turned to face the Vaxian captain. "But we also learn that when someone calls for help, you answer. Not because you have to, but because it's the right thing to do." As the human ships began their journey home, word of the rescue spread across the galaxy. The story grew in the telling, as stories do, but at its heart it remained simple. When innocent people cried out in the darkness of space, the humans heard them and came. And somewhere in the vast galaxy, other raiders heard the story too. They learned that attacking civilian ships might bring more than just military response. It might bring humans, and humans were very dangerous when someone hurt the innocent. The universe was a little bit safer because of that fear,